Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. Hope you're all having a great Wednesday. It is New Comic Book Day, but there's been a lot of shipping issues this week. So if you go to your local comic shop, remember, be kind because they're they're dealing with not having a lot of books, and there's probably going to be a lot of angry customers. So don't be one of those. Be a nice person. But you know what? That's a good rule of thumb for every day, whether it's a Wednesday New Comic Day, it's a Tuesday, a Thursday, or whatever. Just be a good person. All right. Today we are going to focus on a show that I have a feeling the majority of you are not watching. And the reason I think the majority of you are watching it is because it debuted on a channel called Epics, which I think we had for a little while, then we didn't have. It's it's not a very popular channel, and I'm not sure why Warner Brothers decided to put a show there, but they did, and they did for 2 seasons, and now they have picked it up and moved it to HBO Max as they begin work on a season 3. That show is called Pennyworth. And if you're a fan at all of DC Comics, you probably know that Pennyworth, of course, is Alfred Pennyworth, the longtime butler of the Batman. And with the fact that the Batman opens in theaters this week, seems like a good time to talk about this show, since, again, it just moved over to HBO Max. Now, I had seen some stuff for the show prior to this recent move, but not having epics and not really feeling like spending money for a channel for one show, I decided I was going to wait on it. And I didn't really have anything at the time when the show came out. I wasn't working here. I wasn't doing this show, and I wasn't at Bleeding Cool anymore. So I decided I would just skip it and maybe pick it up on Blu-ray when it came out or something. Well, recently discovered it was moving over here. It was actually during the DC Fan Fest when they announced the series was getting a third season and it was moving to HBO Max that I went, oh, I'm going to have to watch out for this. And then, of course, the other day I'm flipping through HBO Max and I was looking just for anything to watch and came across it. And I thought, well, I should give this a shot. Now, what I discovered is an absolutely crazy show, but crazy in the best possible way. Let me give you the setup on this show. Yes, we're following a younger version of Batman's butler, Alfred. But you have to really think of, there's been many incarnations of Alfred. You know, we have I think his name was Charles Napier, or I think that was his name. The gentleman that played Alfred in the Batman 66 series. Then there was Alfred in the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher films, who was the same guy through all 4 films. That's the thing that amazes me. They changed Batman 3 times. They kept the same Alfred through all of them, and he was great. And then we have Michael Caine's version in the Batman Begins Christopher Nolan trilogy. And we had Sean Pertwee play Alfred in Gotham. We had Jeremy Irons play him in the Justice League and Batman versus Superman movie. And now we have Andy Serkis playing him in The Batman. So a lot of people have played this character, and he has changed quite a bit over the years. He was much more the stodgy butler in the Batman 66 series and also the Tim Burton films. It wasn't until Well, you can look at the Earth 2 series or Earth 1 series of comics that Jeff Johns wrote with Gary Frank that gave Alfred this military background. There had been talk about him having been in the military before and having been a medic, a field medic. And that's why he was always able to take care of Batman's wounds. And that was something that had gotten written into the comics. But Jeff Johns and Gary Frank's version made him a ex-soldier that was more fighter than butler. And this incarnation of the character carried over into the Gotham series, where he was portrayed by Sean Pertwee. And that's an important thing to this series because the character is half based on Gotham. And I'll explain why in a second, why it's half based. It comes from Bruno Heller and Danny Cannon. They're the guys that put Gotham together, and the show was pitched as a prequel series for Gotham. So this character is supposed to be the early version of that version of Alfred. But then again, he's not. Because this doesn't appear to be the same world that Gotham is in. Or if it is, it takes a lot of turns. Because this is not our Earth. Things happen very differently in this series than what happened in our actual history. And I'll get into that as we go into the actual episodes. We're going to cover the first 5 episodes today. Then next week I'll talk about the other half of season 1, and then we'll get into season 2 as we go along. So we'll be covering this for a couple weeks because it's a really stunningly good series. But the interesting thing is, I'll give you the idea of the premise. And this is actually coming from the write-up they did. And it basically, Pennyworth explores the early life of the Wayne family butler, Alfred Pennyworth. And here he's a former British SAS soldier who has gotten out after the Malayan emergency. And he's trying to form his own security company with a couple of his mates. And in a London that it's a little bit 1950s and a little bit 1960s. It's this weird mishmash. It's not clear which one it is. And there's a lot of invented events and stuff. Like there's this modern civil war going on between the established government, the Raven Society, which is your extreme right-wing group, and the No Name League, which is your extreme left-wing group. So you've got this upheaval going on, but you've also got things like televised public executions, which I don't believe were a thing in the 50s and the 60s in England. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it was. So it's like I said, it's not exactly our world. Now, the character, like I said, is supposed to be a prequel for Gotham. But the person they cast, when they actually sat down to cast Alfred, they didn't really go with a young Sean Pertwee type. He's actually more of a young Michael Caine. I mean, if you listen to Jack Bannon is the actor who plays Alfred. And he sounds like Michael Caine. Tone, inflection, accent, way he carries himself. I tried to describe this show to somebody the other day. And I said, it's like if you took Michael Caine from Get Carter and dropped him in the middle of the Avengers. And I don't mean Iron Man, Captain America. I mean Steed and Peel from the original days with Patrick McNee and Diana Riggs. If you drop that Michael Caine into that world, you have Pennyworth, and Michael Caine's version of Alfred had the SAS background, stuff like that. So they weren't that different from the Sean Pertwee version, but that's the big thing, is that he really does feel like Michael Caine. And as you watch the series, it becomes more and more clear. A little bit James Bondish, very sure of himself, carries himself very well, but not arrogant. Doesn't put on airs. He's not. That's the one thing. James Bond seems a bit arrogant, and this guy doesn't. He's just another bloke, But when it's time for a fight or something, he can seriously kick ass. So it's an interesting character, and Jack Bannon plays him really well. There's the humility and stuff. Like I said, he really does come across like a young Michael Caine. So that's the premise or the start of it. The rest of the cast is also pretty interesting. He's got 2 soldiers with him that he counts on, that are always at his side. One of them is played by Ryan Fletcher, and his name is Wallace McDougall, but he goes by the name Dave Boy, and he's an alcoholic, but always up for a good fight. But he's a good soldier when he needs to be. The other guy that's on his squad is played by Hainsley Lloyd Bennett, and his name is Dion Bashford, but goes by Baza. And they were all in the service together in the Malayan emergency conflict. So it's a pretty tight-knit group, and they're part of his security group. Now, in the pilot, they introduce us to Thomas Wayne, and he's played by Ben Aldridge. And as much as we know about Alfred, we really don't know a lot about Thomas Wayne. In the comics, occasionally he pops up, and it changes quite a bit depending on the writers. But we know he's a doctor. Well, in this, he's not a doctor, at least not yet. They give you hints that he may be going in that direction. But the pilot episode there's a lot of circumstantial things that happen, a lot of coincidental things that brings the show together. Basically, Thomas suddenly has a sister named Patricia, who I don't believe we've ever had referenced in comics before. But Patricia's a partier and abuses alcohol and drugs, and Thomas is over in London for business, but he's trying to track his sister down. He finds her at this little club that Alfred works at, and Alfie, of course, is the bouncer at the club, has to throw some people out, gets a little blood on his clothes. One of the dancers hands him her handkerchief, and so he can wipe it off. And he says, "Oh, I'll bring it back to you on Saturday." She goes, "I don't work on Saturday." He says, "Neither do I. I'll meet you in the park." And basically asks her out. And that character's name is Esme. Esme is important to the beginning of the series. And that sounds kind of bad, but she's we'll get to what happened, but she's played by Emma Corrin, and she's a cool character. But what happens in the beginning is that she tries to help. Basically, Thomas comes into the club to try to get Patricia out of there. It becomes a scene. Alfred has to help, gets him out of there, gets punched in the face. That's where the blood comes from. Thomas, of course, gives her gives him his card saying if there's any medical bills or whatever, I'll take care of it. And then takes on, and he of course exchanges cards with him. Gives him he's got these new cards for Pennyworth security. And that's pretty much the thing of it. Well, it turns out that Thomas is involved with this group called the No Name League, and they're at odds with the Raven Society. So you got the left wing and the right wing groups, but they're more militant. There's more militia involved. So they want Thomas, and they go to take him, and he ends up getting out of there before they catch him. And as they're going through, he gets out of his apartment. Well, as they're going through his stuff, they find Alfred's card and decide, well, we'll go after this guy to get Thomas. Well, in the meantime, we see Alfred and Esme become closer. They start dating. They start having a relationship, and they end up breaking up because, she meets his father, and his father, who is a butler, is a rather hard case, and she ends up dumping him. And as she ends up dumping him and is about to leave, she gets abducted. She gets kidnapped by a character named Bet Sykes, who works for the Raven Society. Well, Bet is played by singer and actress Paloma Faith, and she is one of the recurring characters in this series that is really interesting. And every time you think she's about to leave the series, she comes back in kind of a different way, or it kind of evolves. So, but the pilot is basically Alfred and his two buddies. They find Thomas Wayne, and then they're trying to get the exchange back. And we meet the head of the Raven Society, Lord James Harwood, played brilliantly by Jason Fleming. And Fleming always plays the maniacally weird, evil leader type very well. And the whole first episode is basically him trying to rescue Esme while keeping Thomas alive. And you think that by the end of the first episode, well, he and Thomas are going to become lifelong friends at the end of this. No, he's pissed at Thomas for having drugged them all into this, wants nothing to do with him, doesn't trust him, doesn't want anything to do with the No Name League or the Raven Society. And even though he's kind of brought the whole thing down, brought down Lord Harwood, the whole thing, this is all in like the 70-minute pilot. This is a huge pilot. No, most of the episodes are normal, it's about 45, 50 minutes. Pilot's like 70 some odd minutes. They really go overboard on it, but in a good way. And we end up with him meeting the Queen, and you think, oh, okay, he's kind of establishing himself. And that's the first episode. And it feels set up, but it also feels pretty straightforward. It's not one of those, you don't know how strange the series is until it really gets going. The second episode takes a completely different tack. Thomas Wayne tries to come hire him, and he refuses. He goes, I want nothing to do with you. Go away. Meanwhile, his local pub, there is this guy coming in and harassing the daughter of the owner of the pub that he goes to. And the guy, of course, is connected to the big mobster in the area. He's the nephew of the mobster. And Alfred and his buddies get involved trying to figure out a way to get rid of this guy. And you can't just off him because you're going to get the mob boss after you. And the mob boss's name is John Ripper, played by, I had it here a second ago, Danny Webb. And he's a mortician and just very creepy. And it's obvious that he doesn't know, or he doesn't take no for an answer. He's just a very interesting character. and everybody in where Alfred grew up knows him, and they try to steer clear of him, but there's a respectful thing because he could kill you and like that. So this pits him against Ripper. So what he ends up doing is kind of interesting. Is he's got this back way of, instead of taking out the nephew, Jason, he finds a way to make Jason look bad to John, to the mob boss. And it's real clever. And this starts showing you how Alfred thinks, that he's a tactical mind. And that's something we don't really get a lot of in his incarnations in the series, in the different Batman stuff. But in this series, he's quick. He figures things out. And like I said, is a good tactical mind. And that's one of the things I really like about the character. But so he ends up, instead of becoming an enemy of the mob boss, he works it so he actually becomes kind of an ally to the mob boss. That shows that potentially he might do work for him, and but shows that this nephew was a liability and would have ended up just getting him in more and more trouble. And like I said, it's a real clever twist on how to deal with that situation, and I really liked that. I thought it just handled it very well. You know, normally you'd have the big showdown and, oh, I've got something on you, whatever. But this was really good, you know. Yeah, Jason Fleming is really good. And they wrap him up, what you think they wrap him up in the first episode, but then they bring him back in a very different way later on in the series. And they do that on a couple characters. It's like, oh, here's this character, but that, you know, but he's gone. And then suddenly he comes back and totally changes things. So the second episode is him just dealing with security, you know, an issue where he got hired and takes care of the situation. And again, this just seems like your normal 1950s style show. No big deal. So really cool about that. But as it gets deeper and deeper, it really starts to change. Now, the third episode, we start getting a little more into the lore, and he is then hired by Martha Kane, who is the maiden name, or the, you know, of Martha Wayne. So we now meet, we've already met Batman's father. Now we get to meet his mother, and she's a photojournalist who is working for the No Name League, and hires him to basically be a driver. And he asks her, do you know who Thomas Wayne is? She goes, I've never heard of him. Or I've never met him. So, which is true, but not true at the same time. And he ends up doing this mission where they're trying to get a scientist out of the country. And the scientist has been arrested for homosexual activities. And, you know, it's a very simple mission. They pose as a lawyer and her assistant to get him out of jail. And and Martha has some pretty highly connected people. So again, we're still on the low levels of stuff. We haven't really started to expand the series yet. So this is another one of those kind of self-contained episodes where we get to see Alfred really work. And when the Raven Society shows up to take the guy from them, you know, he figures a way to trick them to leave and get the guy onto the plane and get him out of town and everything that he needs to do. And that's, again, the third episode kind of establishes this connection with Martha, which is a stronger connection than he has with Thomas. So again, you think that, you know, we're going to build up this big connection between Thomas and Alfred, but he actually has a better connection with Martha in the beginning. And Martha is played by Emma Pates, and really another really good. Most of these characters these actors I hadn't seen before. other than small roles or stuff, not where they just really jumped out at me, other than Jason Fleming. I mean, Jason Fleming is pretty big, but everybody else is just, not someone I've come across that much before, but are really good. I mean, I don't know if there's a bad casting in this. Everybody is really strong. But the third episode kind of establishes that, and then we learn that she's actually working with Thomas. So it's an interesting twist that the two of them hadn't met prior to the assignment, but they meet afterwards, and we find out that she is taking orders from him through the No Name League. And again, No Name League is such a weird name. I don't know if where Raven Society and No Name League come from, but they're interesting and they kind of fit the times. And the war between the two is start building. We start to learn some of the people behind it, and they're not very nice people. So that's the end of the third episode. And let's go ahead and take a break. We'll take the break now, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about this episodes 4 and 5 and a little bit of where I thought the series was going and the sudden twists and stuff. So we'll be right back.
This is The Experience.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hey there. Hi there. Ho there. You're as welcome as can be.
Hi, I'm Nancy McCann. Welcome to Friday Night Live on The Experience.
Welcome, everybody. It's Fat Jack's Comic Crypt. Brendan, Al, Jason, hanging out.
There I am. Welcome back to Kicking It with Henry, folks. I am your host, Henry Kumpa. It's great to be here with you guys.
So we are going to talk about books that are in stores this week.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Mishmash.
Hello, and welcome to the Black Comics Universe, presented by Peep Game Comics.
And you gotta love it that the first people in a minute to skim it are creators.
Up, everybody! Welcome to another Wednesday Warriors. My name is Joey Galvez, and this is my pal Ambrosia.
Hey, everybody! Welcome to Space Cadet.
Hey!
What's up?
Welcome, everyone, for another episode of I Must Ask You a Question.
Hi, everybody, welcome to Nerd News Now.
Hey, this is Rex. Welcome to Comic Collectibles.
Hey, hello, all you happy people. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is the crazy show that we do on Thursdays called What's in the Box? What's in the Box?
Comic culture and sales.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. We are talking about the Pennyworth series and going through the first 5 episodes. A lot of people haven't seen this series because it debuted on Epix, which if you have it and you've seen it, terrific. If you haven't, now's your chance because it's over on HBO Max and it is well worth watching. I'm well into the second series now, but we're going to take it in smaller chunks, talk about the series because it deserves that kind of attention. Before I go any further, though, I want to remind you guys that coming up right after this show is Comic Collectibles with Rex and John, and they've got some pretty interesting books on the list today. There is some Ken Hazer commission cover art. Now, if you're wondering what the hell's commission cover art, they're trying to get away from sketch covers. that term. They're trying to get where you commission someone to draw on the cover, commission cover art. So that's where they're trying to get with that term. And Ken Hazer is someone who does a lot of it for Dynamite and the folks over in Dynamic Forces. And he does some really great stuff. I know there's a Cable one. There's a Flash one. So if you're looking for something like that, there's some signed books. I saw a Greg Land signed book from Siege. I also saw a Hell Sonia cover by Joseph Michael Linsner. Some really good books coming up right after this. So in just a half hour, join Rex and John for Comics Collectibles. Okay. Let's get back into Pennyworth. And episode 4, while I enjoyed episode 1 and 2 and the establishment of the relationship between Esme and Alfred, it was always a back burner thing for me. You know, I didn't really care that much about their relationship. There was a moment that he goes to talk to her father in episode 3 to ask for her hand in marriage and is denied. And it turns out that she actually comes from money, is a titled person, but has kind of walked away from all that to be an actress. And this really throws him off because he's the son of servants, and we're not so, I mean, we have it here in America, but the class system over in England is a little more rigid, you know, in that we're here, we always think we can go up. You know, oh, no, yeah. But if you're the son of servants and you don't feel that you should be dating someone who's the daughter of a lord type of thing, you know, or of royalty or anything like that. So that caused a rift between them. And they get it worked out. And they end up living, you know, getting a place together after his helping Martha and making pretty good money for solving that problem. He rents a place and has her move in and proposes to her, and they're going to get married, regardless of her father, regardless of his father and his attitudes. It's, you know, they're moving forward, and it was kind of weird because it felt like it wasn't a necessary plot thing, but it was there, and it was neat. I mean, their interactions were fun. They had good chemistry, stuff like that. But I wanted the action and stuff. You know, I wanted to follow that. So I was still thinking this series was a certain type of thing up in the first 3 episodes. Then episode 4 comes along. And episode 4 is the most Avengers feeling thing I have seen in a long time. Martha hires him again to help him just as a driver, or to have him drive her to a meeting where they're going to meet someone from the Raven Society to get the name of their new leader. Lord Harwood was their leader who got arrested because of Pennyworth. So the No Name League wants to know who the new leader of the Raven Society is. So they're going there simply to get the information. They arrive at the train station where the person is and discovers him stabbed to death. This is where Alfred lifts his wallet and gets out of there with her. The two of them get out of there, discover 3 tickets to, before the guy actually, he's stabbed, looks dead, but before he dies, he utters the word, the darkness, and then boom. Well, he's got these 3 train tickets to this small town. Well, they decide, let's go to the small town and see if we can continue this thread to try to figure out who it is. And we end up in this tiny little town that, like I said, feels like it's directly out of the Avengers series. Everybody is connected to the Raven Society, it seems. They go to this little shop this tea shop that has the darkness in the title. And it turns out the woman's name is Ness. I don't know. They have tea, and he announces just openly, "Oh, we were supposed to meet somebody and come here, and they were dead. So we're trying to figure out what it has to do." All he said was the name of the tea shop. I mean, he was very open about it. So you have this whole thing going on where he and Martha are in this quirky little town where everybody seems out to get them. And he ends up in a fight over a shotgun with the shop owner, which ends up killing her. And they have to run from all the people in the town. And as they're getting away, Martha cuts her leg open on glass. So he takes her to the country doctor that's kind of out on the outside of town, while he goes and tries to just confront the people and find out who the leader is. And it turns out the leader's the country doctor that he took her to. It's just a really strange little episode. But the quirkiness of it, again, just sold me on that feeling. And we'd had little bits of it, but suddenly we're watching the Avengers. And I was enjoying the hell out of that episode. That's probably one of my favorite episodes. Because like I said, it's just got this odd feeling where if you ever watch the Avengers, you'd have them go to these little small towns, and there'd be nobody there other than the specific people they had to interact with. There weren't extras. There weren't people just walking along the street or cars driving by. They would seem deserted other than specific people they needed to see. Well, that was originally because of the budget. They didn't have the budget for extras and stuff like that in the Avengers. But that's the feeling we got from this. And we do find out who the new leader is. It's this woman named Gaunt, the doctor, Dr. Gaunt. And she's certain that they're there to kill her. And they're not. They're just there to get her name. So basically, once they get out of the situation of being caught, they leave. They don't kill anybody. Well, okay. The tea woman got killed, but it was in a fight over a gun. They didn't specifically go there to kill. But as they get away, it's just this really interesting little thing. And again, it's a closer bonding between Martha and Alfred. You can see them actually becoming friends. And at one point when they get back and they've had this adventure, they kiss. And Alfred stops it. And he leaves. And he goes back to his place. Now, there's something that I missed out on here. In the first episode, when Esme was kidnapped, she got really spooked by the woman that kidnapped her, which was Bet. And Bet was supposed to be killed in a public execution, and turns out she wasn't, and was rescued by her sister. There's a long thing, but they thought she was dead. But Esme still felt nervous about it, felt like somebody was going to get her. So she was staying with the Pennyworth, Alfred's parents, while he was away on this case. And as he was coming back and they were going to move into their own new place together, she decided she wanted to go over and do some painting. So it's late at night and she's painting in this apartment. And he gets back to the house, at his parents' house, finds that they're asleep and that Esme has gone to go painting. So he starts walking over to the new apartment. And suddenly someone lets themselves into the apartment before he gets there and kills Esme, chokes her to death. So you've got this very strange kind of Avengers-like episode that ends with this very tragic death, the death of this character's love interest. And that's maybe the one thing that she kind of gets fridged. You know what I mean? I mean, they spend some time on her character, they make her a good character, and then they kill her to bring this character along. So it's a little bit of fridging there. So that's my one knock on the show is that. But the police seem to think that it was a break-in. She had her engagement ring stolen. And that's how the episode ends, with him crying over the body. And then when we start the next episode, of course, it's at the funeral. Martha and Thomas are there, and Thomas is trying to give Martha a new assignment, and Martha is like upset for Alfred, and Alfred feels guilty because he had just kissed Martha, and then then Esme gets killed. He gets into this depressive funk. He's not going out. He's not doing anything. And the guy that snaps him out of it, the guy that comes along and gets him back out of his head, and it's not like immediate. We watch him slowly start to deteriorate. It's John Ripper. It's the mob guy who just shows up at his house. Oh, I'm sorry. Kyle suggests I explain fridging for those going, what the heck is he talking about? Okay. Fridging is a term coined by, I believe, Gail Simone. And it has to do with the old Green Lantern comics back when Kyle Rayner was the Green Lantern. And he had a girlfriend, and one of his major villains killed her and shoved her in the refrigerator. And while very dramatic, it became the phrase for basically killing off a female love interest for the sole purpose of moving the male character's story forward. Character growth, personality, So it's this disrespecting treatment of a female character for the growth of a male character. And that's kind of what we had here. She was basically fridged. She's introduced, she's around for 3 episodes, and then she's killed because of him by an enemy to move that character along or the story along. And it's a bad trope. It's something that happens in stories all the time. Comics loves to do that, and it started getting called out. Like I said, Gail Simone, I believe, was the first one to put a name to it, but it's a thing that should be avoided, and they did it here. Because what happens next is, like I said, Ripper shows up and says, so, my normal running partner is 2 broken legs, and you get the idea that Ripper's the one that broke his legs. He says, I need a new running partner. You're size 10, right? And throws him a pair of trainers or sneakers or tennis shoes, whatever you call them. I believe in England they call them trainers. And he goes, I'm not really a runner. He goes, put them on. Next thing you know, there's Alfred in his sweats coming outside, and Ripper starts running, and Alfred starts following him. And we get this little montage of them running together, and they change the clothes every once in a while, so we see that time is passing and that Ripper is in much better shape in the beginning. And then by the end of the montage, Alfred is the one in better shape and running past him and stuff like that. But it kind of gets him out of his head. And then then one morning they're out running, and he stops at Esme's grave. And there's no headstone yet. And he says, the ground's covered over nicely. It's time for a headstone. What do you want? Do you want this, 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 this? And Alfred's like, look, why did you bring me here? And he says, look, think about it. There was no breaking and entry into the apartment. Somebody let themselves in with the key. And he basically tells him that Esme was murdered. It wasn't a random killing. And this sets him on a path to figure out who did it and what happened. And meanwhile, all this is going on. we're following the character of Bet occasionally, the Palame Faith character, who is this crazy woman who, like I said, works for the Raven Society, got away from being hung by her sister, helped her. And she, who had kidnapped Esme, now considers that she was in love with Esme and was actually going to see Esme the night she was murdered. Esme wants nothing to do with her, or wanted nothing to do with her, was scared of her, was actually having nightmares about her. So this loony girl. But so she's out there too. And that's basically what gets him out of it, though. But at the same time, she... I watched so many episodes, I was trying to blur a little bit. But at the same time, she comes across this guy in the street who is gotten, his legs have been busted up. He can barely walk. He's being treated like an animal. He's being walked around by the homeless people on a leash. And his nose has been basically torn off. So he's got no nose, just a gap. And it's very disturbing looking. And she realizes, hey, that's Lord Harwood. That used to be my boss. And she ends up taking him in. Now, Bet and her sister Peggy needed a place to hide out. And Peggy is a dominatrix. So she randomly shows up at one of her clients' house, who lives there with his wife, and takes over and turns this husband and wife into their personal slaves, and are hiding out there. And now they bring Lord Harwood in, who is just mentally broken by the British government. I mean, there's so much going on in the series. It's so weird. But he's been broken by the government, body and mind. He doesn't remember who he is. When his name is mentioned, he's like, oh, he's bad, I'm not him, no. So they're trying to help him out. So that's all going on in the background of this. Plus, you've got a story about Pennyworth's mates dealing with the one guy's alcoholism and how it gets him, he accidentally kills somebody. And so you got all these things going on. But the main story is you've got him coming back and trying to figure out what happened to Esme and who killed her. And it is just an absolutely crazy thing. And then as he, once he gets back into it and finds out, okay, somebody killed her, Ripper tells him, well, I don't know who did it, but I know who can tell you. And he sends her to this woman called the Baroness, who is in a mental institution. And it's suddenly we're in the middle of an episode of Hannibal, except reversed, with Alfred being the Clarice character and Baroness being Hannibal Lecter. And she wants to, she'll tell him what it is, who it is, but, but it's witchcraft. She's a witch. And if he wants the answer, she has to bring him the left hand of a murderer and a red rose on the next full moon. And Alfred's like, this is absolutely insane. You're crazy. So he walks out of there and he confronts Ripper, calling him, and why are you playing me? All this stuff. He tries to go back to his old job at the bar bouncing. He ends up getting into a fight with somebody who pulls a sword or a machete. And in the fight, he ends up getting the machete and chopping the guy's left hand off. And it lies on the ground in a puddle of water next to a rose. And you see the full moon in the reflection. He takes that as a sign, takes the hand and all that back to Baroness, who puts him into a dream trance. And the whole thing leads up to a guy that we had seen in a couple times in flashbacks, this captain that he had embarrassed. And it turns out that's the guy that killed Esme. And that's the 5th episode. So we have a little bit of witchcraft, strange, quirky towns, a homicidal killer who thinks she's in love with one of her victims, with someone she kidnapped, a dominatrix who take over someone's house. This is Alfred Pennyworth. This is just the first 5 episodes, and I will tell you, these are the normal 5 episodes. These are the most normal. They only get weirder going forward. Put it this way. Episode 6 introduces us to Satanist and writer Aleister Crowley, or magician and Satanist Aleister Crowley. Yeah, Aleister Crowley becomes a character. Yeah. This, the first 3 episodes, it just seemed like a very normal show. But as we learn more about, I forgot one of the important things. So Thomas wants to hire, in the 5th episode, Thomas wants to hire Alfred to do a hit. Basically, the Raven Society and the No Name League are going to get together, and they want to kill Gaunt, so they can end the Civil War going in the streets. Well, he refuses. So Thomas ends up hiring Danny Boy, the drunkard, to do it. And of course, that doesn't go well. But to get the name of the Baroness, to find out who killed Esme, Ripper has a job that he wants Alfred to do. And that job is to kill the head of the No Name League. So Davy Boy, goes in, messes up, gets shot. Alfred shows up, has to rescue Davy Boy, kills the guy, the male head of the No Name League, who's there with his wife, leaves Gaunt alive, leaves the wife alive, picks up Davy Boy and leaves and takes him to the doctor. And I mean, it gets stranger and stranger. And then at the end of that, we find out that Ripper is actually having an affair with the wife of the guy who's the head of the No Name League. So the reason he was helping Alfred was because his girlfriend wanted to take over the No Name League. It's a very strange show. But I got to tell you, you get into it and it just, you can't believe what's happening next. And like I said, it gets stranger going forward. You know, like I said, the Aleister Crowley thing is weird. The things Alfred keeps getting into, the battle between the No Name League, Harwood coming back, just Bet ends up getting involved when he tries to track down the guy that killed his old captain that killed Esme. That's all in 6 through 10. It's just crazy, and it's brilliant. It really is. The guy Jack Bannon is so fun to watch, and like I said, he carries himself like a young Michael Caine. Dashing, debonair, has that accent, has that voice. If you close your eyes, you would believe it's Michael Caine. And he's not putting it on. It's not affected. He's not trying to be. I've seen interviews with him, and he sounds exactly like that. Now, I've seen interviews with other members of the cast, like the guy playing Ben Aldridge, who's playing Thomas Wayne. And I saw an interview with him, and he's British. But he doesn't play British in the show at all. He plays American. And he sounds American. So I was a little surprised he was British because his accent was spot on, you know. But the guy, Jack Bannon, is just so much like Michael Caine. It's kind of scary, which makes this even more interesting because you kind of get lost in that, you know. And you're watching him in his relationship with his father, which gets more and more important as the series goes. You know, we find out that his father's not exactly a nice guy, and he's a butler that works for a lord, but he hasn't always been good to his son or to his wife. And we start learning that maybe his dad is kind of a follower of the Raven Society, is a conservative and believes in what they talk about. We see him getting mixed up with the young woman who he helped in the second episode that he got Ripper's nephew away from. He starts having something with her now that Esme is gone. There's just a lot going on, and it's a very interesting show. But it's one of those that you get into, and then you find yourself immediately starting the next episode because you can't believe what you just saw. Or they take, when Ripper ended up, sleeping with the woman from the No Name League, it's stunning because there was no connection to them before that. But when you see it, you're like, oh, of course. Well, that makes sense. And then suddenly more possibilities open up. Or when Bet finds Harwood, and it's like, oh, we thought we were done with Harwood. Now what the hell's going to happen there? Or why is Bet still alive? Or why is she going to work with Alfred? And it's absolutely crazy. And it's fun also because you see these, every once in a while you stop and you go, oh yeah, he ends up working for Thomas and raising Bruce Wayne. Don't see how that's going to become, because Thomas and Martha can barely get along. It's a really fascinating show, and I'm glad that I stumbled upon it, or I found it again. And we're going to continue talking about it because I finished season 1. So next week we'll talk about 6 through 10. And then the major shift they do between season 1 and season 2 is quite shocking. And I'm just getting into season 2 now. And then from what I understand, there's going to be like a 5-year time jump between season 2 and season 3. So this is an interesting one. And if you turn it on, get in the mindset that you're watching an Elseworld or like a What If episode. Just take that in mind. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. That is the show. I will be back tomorrow to talk about the psychology of the Riddler and how the serial killer aspect that's coming out in the new Batman movie has actually been under the surface the whole time. So we'll get into that tomorrow. That'll be an interesting episode, especially if you're deep into psychology. Stick around. Coming up next, collecting or comics collectibles with Rex and John. See you guys tomorrow. Good night.